Welcome to MMA Fancast. My name is Luke Payson, and I am honored to be joined by Adam Caldwell. Adam, welcome to the show.
How you doing, Luke?
I'm doing very well. Congratulations. You are undefeated in your amateur MMA career, 2-0 with 2 knockouts. And I had you on the show very briefly for a quick post-fight interview at Brawl 16 on April 15th after you had gotten your second knockout. And you're making the quick turnaround a couple months later for the July 15th card, Brawl 17 versus another undefeated 2-0 fighter. So let's jump in. What made you want to turn around and go from April to July? And what made you say yes to a fight to a guy, James Padmore, who's also 2-0, just like you?
Yeah, man. I mean, right now I didn't get hurt or nothing like that in the last fight. I feel good. I'm ready to fight as much as possible for the time being. And as far as taking a fight with James, I mean, he's definitely a talented fighter. And I'm looking to test myself. That's the reason we do this for. If it was easy, everybody would do it. You know what I mean? So always looking for that step up in competition.
That's very true. And it's also hats off to James for being willing to take it. Both of you guys showing your eagerness to test yourself. He's also 2-0 with 2 knockouts, just like you, 2-0 with 2 knockouts. You got into MMA, actually fighting MMA in your mid-30s. We've talked about that a little bit. But you've been a martial artist for your whole life, training boxing with your uncle, a whole bunch of other things. Now that you've had 2 fights, what training technique or discipline do you find yourself relying on? Is it a mix of a bunch of different things, or do you rely more on sort of that boxing IQ or more on sort of, I think you had karate background? Like, now that you've been in there a little bit, what do you find yourself using comfortability wise?
I mean, it's no secret that, I like to stand, but I'm comfortable anywhere the fight may take me. I have a background in wrestling, and I've been trained in some jujitsu. I'm not a jujitsu practitioner, but I do enough to where I know how to defend and what I need to do if situation arises. So I'm comfortable anywhere the fight may take me. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the challenge of becoming a true mixed martial artist, and you certainly have accepted that challenge of being able to learn enough and know enough to be dangerous and competent anywhere it goes. Both you guys as 2-0, this is your guaranteed last fight for both you and James to be under novice amateur rules. And the main difference, once you get advanced amateur, which you're both guaranteed to get next fight, would be ground and pound on the ground. To my recollection, you haven't spent a lot of time on the ground because you've mainly been winning on your feet. But comfortability from your wrestling background and your striking background, for now, what we've seen that novice can still punch below the clavicle, can still knee below the clavicle. Is that something you would mix in, or if you were in top control, would you probably get back to standing? We've seen Roy Nelson and other big-time fighters in the UFC sometimes just stand up if they're in a position where they can take it back to the feet, or is it very situational once you're in there?
Yeah, it's very situational, because one, it all depends on who you're in there with. You know what I mean? Because there's some people that are high-level jiu-jitsu practitioners that they invite you to come down when they're on their back. That's where they want you to be at, and you just have to be aware of that and know that that's what that person wants. And also, it all depends on how the fight gets to the ground. You know what I mean? If land a big shot, I know he's hurt. Definitely, I'll take it to the ground and pound to finish the fight. But that's, like I said, it's all situational. It all depends on which way the fight's going. If I know he's hurt or not. If I know he's a jiu-jitsu guy that wants me to come down there and try to get me in his guard to where he can get a submission. It's just something, it just all depends on where the fight may go,
Sure. And I jumped ahead a little bit because you gave a great answer for what you will do when you're an advanced amateur, but for this fight, it's still novice rules, not advanced amateur yet, due to you guys both being 2-0. So obviously you won't have ground and pound this time. What is the weight class? I know you fought at heavyweight, you fought at catch weight, he's fought at light heavyweight. Is this a catch weight of like 220, or is this all the way down to light heavyweight? And if so, how do you think you'll do at 205?
This is gonna be a 205. And you know, to be honest, I mean that's where I want to be at. That's the weight class I'm looking to compete as long as the fights are available there. You know, and I honestly I think that I'll do better there. You know, I mean, in my first fight, you know, I mean, if you look back and see the first fight, I was pretty out of shape. I was overweight, you know what I mean? So losing the weight, getting back in shape, I'm obviously a lot quicker, you know what I mean? My cardio is way better. So, you know, losing all that excess weight and being down at a lower weight class, I think would be a lot better for me.
Sure. I mean, that certainly makes a lot of sense. I know your last weigh-in, which I believe was the 220 catch weight. I think that's what I was
Yes.
remembering. You
Yeah.
weighed in at 216, so you were at that point barely a heavyweight at 216, since 205 is light heavyweight. So certainly shout out to you and to everybody in your camp to kind of work with you. You know, you started out not quite in ideal shape, and you've been using training and fighting to get into shape, which I think makes a lot of sense given what you've been doing. And obviously 205 is a established weight class, so you won't have to ask for catch weights once you're at that fight. There should be sort of easier matchmaking because people you know, take fights at that weight class. You mentioned cardio. What have you felt has been improving? Is it your ability for duration? Because there's kind of two types of cardio. There's quick burst cardio where you have kind of more energy in go methods, and there's also kind of that longer cardio. Are you working to develop both, or are you mainly focusing on trying to develop longer cardio because, you know, down the road your fights will get longer?
I mean, both. I mean, because you have to utilize both. You know what I mean? You know, like Justin Gaethje said, fights basically just small car crashes over and over. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of quick bursts. You know what I mean? But also you have to have that cardio if the fight goes into later rounds, especially once you get up to 3 to 5 minute rounds. You know, you have to be ready for all them long rounds. So I'm working on both. You know, I mean, I'm good for short bursts, and I'm also good for the long distance.
Well, and I think that goes to your willingness to push yourself and kind of develop that fight IQ, not only in what you do in the fight, but also what your cardio is like going into that fight. So let's talk a little bit. It's an exciting, first of all fans love the big guys, right? Big boy fights always get people excited. That's typically light heavyweight or heavyweight. Those are kind of like the two biggest divisions people get excited about. So you and James's fight, both being undefeated, both knockout wins. What do you want to see from yourself? Do you want to make a prediction? You've already called James Padmore skilled. Obviously, both of you guys are skilled. So what do you kind of want to see out of yourself July 15th at Brawl 17?
You know, basically, I mean, as far as prediction goes, you know, I'm not big on predictions. I'm a realist. I know anything can happen, everything's possible. But you know, what I'd like to see is definitely an early Vic. You know, the goal is always to get in and out as quick as possible, but be prepared for anything. You know what I mean? So I'd like to get it done early, but you know, either way, I'm good with it.
That makes sense. Makes sense. Obviously, you'll take whatever ends up happening in the fight that you can do. I'm looking at the Tapology rankings, and you know, obviously heavyweights right now, you're ranked as a heavyweight. You're number 3 in the state. Your opponent is number 4 in the state. So kind of a 3-4 battle right there. I know I'm going to mention that on the broadcast, and that's out of like about 35 heavyweights in the state. So even though you guys both are only going into your third fight, it's at the heavyweight level. You know, people rise and fall very quickly at heavyweight because of how much power people have. So that's kind of heavyweight, light heavyweight, either way. And that's one of the reasons why I think people get so excited. Now, frame-wise, and I'm going off having watched both you guys fight, I think you're several, let me check, but I think you're several inches taller than James. And obviously you've got a bigger frame at 205. Yeah, I think you're a few inches apart. Is that something that you've been looking for by going down in weight? You might be fighting guys a little bit shorter, or are you not really emphasizing the height?
The height, I don't feel like that's a big factor, to be honest with you. I mean, it can play a factor with reach and all that, and but at the end of the day, if a person knows how to work around that, especially a shorter fighter, that if they're training, I mean, they're obviously going to be training with bigger guys most of the time, so they know how to work around that. And I mean, at the end of the day, especially even at 205, you're gonna see a lot of guys 6'2", 6'3",
Yeah.
even bigger than me. You know what I mean? You get tall, skinny guys that have the weight. You know what I mean? So height's not that's not a factor for me. I just I'm just looking to fight whoever, whenever.
Well, that makes sense. And obviously, the best 205 fighter ever in the UFC was John Jones, is John Jones. And he was known as kind of chicken legs or skinny legs because
Yeah.
6'4", 205, but still great frame for 205. And you're listed at 6'1". So a very, very exciting matchup. Let's talk about what it's like to have, because I've been at all your fights. You fought for 247 exclusively. You always have a loud, rambunctious cheering section. Usually your family, your uncle is in your corner and is a big time part of your training. But who are you excited to kind of have at the Monroeville Convention Center in your cheering section? And then let's talk about who's been helpful to you as far as your training, your gym, and those type things.
Yeah, man. I mean, last time we sold quite a bit of tickets. I mean, it's just awesome, all the support that I've been getting from my hometown. We've had a lot of people making that trip all the way down there to Washington to come watch me, and I'm just hoping that it continues to grow, and maybe eventually between like me, Ethan Goss, and a couple other guys around here, we might be able to get a fight up around this way someday. And uh as far as thanking people, obviously I gotta thank my uncle. He's been training me in martial arts since I was a child. Like I said, I fought my first karate tournaments at probably like 7 years old. Fred Dixon, he's another one of the coaches that helped me out. Carl Odell, he helps me work pads with me and all that. And then I also train at a gym in Du Bois called React, and Lance Thompson and everybody he got over there. They're great coaches, good people over there to work with. And yeah, I like going there as well. So.
Well, that sounds good. And obviously it's great that you have so many people pouring into you as both a person, like your uncle, your whole life. And also it really shows, particularly in MMA, the value of picking up skills from various gyms with various skills, and obviously moving around and making sure you're getting all the different looks. You've made an impressive run. I was looking, your debut MMA fight is still not a year ago.
Right.
I think it was in 2022, but as far as the calendar year, I don't think you've quite gone a full year. And so you'll have at minimum, because your first fight was in October. So you'll have 3 fights, maybe even 4 fights in your first year. Is that something that's important to you to stay busy and active? I mean, having 3 fights in your first year is impressive for anybody. And at the age of 35, makes it even more impressive to stay that active.
Yeah, man, like you just said, I'm 35 years old, so it's no secret I don't have a lot of time in this, you know what I mean? So like I said, as long as I can stay healthy and the fights are there, I'm going to take the fights when I can, you know what I mean?
Well, I think that's what makes you really exciting. Not only the way you've been winning by knockout, and your opponent has that same impressive knockout record as well, but also you've been staying busy and by fighting just for 247. And I think that's what's cool too. You and others by fighting for 247, almost every card. Yeah, in fact, you have been fighting almost every card, if not every other card for 247. Even your fan group, will grow because people that come. This is something Ryan Milton, the owner of 247 Fighting Championships, and I have talked quite a bit about. It was really his vision. I think it's a great vision. It's really helped 247. Is when you put on a really good card, if a fan group comes to watch one fighter, which is typically what happens, but then they end up loving the whole card. They end up becoming fans of other fighters on the card, and I'm sure that's happening with your style, where people come out to watch other fighters on the card. You've been fighting at the Meadows Casino, great event. They come to watch other fighters. You have an impressive knockout. Now they're your fan as well, so that your fan group will grow the more you fight. And that's kind of one benefit that really 247's really been trying. And Jim Mooney, the head matchmaker for 247, is aware of that. As far as the more often you fight, the more your fan group will grow, even from people that are just going to the live fight. So speaking of people going to live fights, this is the opportunity we always say to encourage people to get tickets from you or from your gym. If they're buying tickets online at 247 Fighting, a quick reminder that they need to pick your name at checkout so you get credit. Or if some people don't make the trip, they can get the pay-per-view through 247 Live app or the 247fighting.com, and they still have the opportunity to give you credit if they're buying the pay-per-view to watch it from a distance. So I really appreciate you come back on the show. July is just around the corner. We're right around a month away. Monroeville Convention Center is a great venue as well. And I can't wait to see you and James throw down. I'm sure you're going to be one of the louder, more entertaining fights. Thanks so much, Adam Caldwell. This is Luke Basin, MMA Fancast. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, Luke. Have a good rest of your day, man.
You got it. You too, sir.